And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for our first guest. And anytime we get a chance to talk with people in music, we are just so excited and so grateful. So we have right here artist extraordinaire, whether it's music, hip hop, writing, you name it. This is a quality act, creative act. We have Tsukiyomi joining us. How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing really good. I'm exquisite, actually. How about yourself?
See, there you go. See, I already said extraordinaire. You used the word exquisite. So smooth. You must be an artist, definitely. Hey,
I'm a bit of a poet.
just a little bit. Before we get into the music, share with our viewers a little bit about your backstory. Where are you from? And before you decided to pivot into music, what were some of the other moving parts or other different things that you had an interest in?
Well, I'm from Havelock, North Carolina. I was born on a military base in Cherry Point. My father was in the Marines. My mother was in the Navy. Um, I moved around a lot as a kid. I didn't stay there long. Like as soon as I popped out the womb, I was city to city, state to state. Growing up, I was about 12 or 13 years old, right before I made the pivot into music. I was just working side road jobs, doing produce, mowing like big lawns, helping this guy named Jimmy who was trying to teach me better work ethic to keep me out the streets. He was like, man, I see you trying to hustle, you're trying to help your mom, but you're too young to work. And if you keep going the route you're going, you're going to end up dead or in jail. What do you know about work ethic? And that's when I'm like, hey, I may be 12 years old, but if you can teach me how to make honest money and not be at risk all the time, then yeah, let's go. And I worked for that guy until I was 16. And every dollar he gave me, I used to build the studio when I was around 13. So around that, after that first year making some coins, my homies were like, we were in high school. They're like, man, excuse my language, but they were like, man, we need some bitches. And I'm just like, how are we gonna do that? They're like, we gotta make music.
And I'll tell you what, it's funny because using creative license, well, we'll just say this: using creative license, there are different levels of creativity. We're going to put it there. But I think what was really impressive of what you said, even early, you had the work ethic and you knew you were wanting to work hard towards something. You might not have known exactly where, and you might not have known exactly how, but you knew that if I'm going to do whatever, I've got to be dedicated to the craft.
Well, growing up in that environment where, money is getting tight, families separating, and you're trying to, take care of yourself and your people in the household, you start to put the toys away fast. And when my friends were like, hey, we need to make music, I was the first guy to always get an idea and have everybody hop on. But I'm the guy hopping on their idea. And I'm like, okay, well, what does it take to get started? And all our other ideas, Beyblades, Yu-Gi-Oh cards, whatever the kids want to play, it's a little bit of money, something cheap you can get from the store. But they were talking about music. And I'm sitting here working this little side job at 12, 13, 14 years old. And the equipment is like hundreds, thousands of dollars, And I'm like, hey, if I'm going to be spending money on getting this equipment and putting it in my house, I'm going to get damn good at this and I'm going to make my money back. And that's what I did.
and I tell, and I tell you what, even like once music, I'll say, hooked you, you did what you needed to do to not only, let it really get a stronger foothold. Now, before getting into music style, everybody to varying degrees, there's some type of artist or some song or what have you that you kind of like gravitated towards. Who would you say, as you're putting your music together, who would you say were some of the artists or some of the influences that you might have, grown up? And there's always that track, let me play it back, let me run it back. Who are some of those artists that you could say, hey, these are artists that really kind of kept my drive going regarding music?
Okay, now when it came to just figuring out like what my emotions were, it was a lot of Sum 41, Avenged Sevenfold, Breaking Benjamin, Pierce the Veil, bands like that. Obviously in the older household, coming from my grandparents and my parents, we had like the Marvin Gaye and the Genuine and stuff like that. So I'm used to hearing that soulful R&B feel, but something in my youth had like a nice punk rock feel. And then when my brother introduced me to like, hey, nah, you don't have to hate hip hop. Like, it's not all ignorant. Like, there's some good rappers out there. First few guys he put me on were Eminem and 50 Cent. And then it went to Lil Wayne. And from there, it was like, yo, there's a whole world of people. Then it was Drake. Then it was Nicki. And then it was Party Next Door. After that, Travis Scott. You start going back. We got Kid, and it became so big. It just became so big. There were so many different inspirations. So what I did was, while I was learning to engineer, building my studio, I just got some nice album cuts, and I was like, hey, to develop my sound, I'm gonna find some really well-produced albums that are good to my ears, and I'm just going to emulate those sounds over and over again until my brain and my engineering style evolves that sound. And one album that I always refer back to is Drake's Nothing Was the Same. That was the sound that inspired the start of like the hard-hitting kicks and those ambient sounds in the background, and the way that I put the ad-libs in tuck in all the different reverbs and delays and the undering of the main vocal, like all of that little technical stuff, that's stuff that I listened to from that album. And then some other albums that I have in the cut was Party Next Door's First Colors. I just like the way that sounds. And then his first tape. And yeah, those were the first 2 or 3 albums where I really just honed in and was like, I want to develop my sound off of this sound. Now, as far as my entire sound catalog, I can't even go on to explain that. You know, we're talking music, we'll be talking for hours. I got CDs on CDs on CDs, albums on albums. Also, one I have to shout out is Earl Sweatshirts. Once again, excuse my language, but the album is I Don't Like Shit, I Don't Go Outside. That album gave me phenomenal eeriness and darkness that I know how to underlay some dark tone grit, sort of like a dirt sound, into the tracks that kind of make them muddier, but not muddy in a way where it's distorted, muddy in a way where you can understand the artistic expression of it. But that's something else.
No, but I'm glad you're walking through that, because and I always say, for any artist, you know, music or otherwise, it is a craft, and there's levels to it, and showing, you know, depth and detail. And even during that explanation, you were showing I've got a command of what I'm doing. Like, would you say, in regards to learning what you've learned, was it a combo of being self-taught and other people teaching? Was it just when you would listen to different tracks, was it something that would pop up and you'd see, let me see if I can duplicate that or go beyond it? Like, walk through a little bit more of that creative process.
Okay. So, greatest quote I've ever learned as an artist is, you know, the greatest artist steal shit. So what I'm essentially doing is I'm finding the classics. I'm finding what's nostalgic to my taste. I'm not looking for what's current in today's sound. I'm looking for what's that one piece of today's sound that kind of reminds you of something you can't put your thoughts on. And then I go for that sound. And I try to find a way to recreate it with the most popular bass lines I've heard, with the most popular melodies and choruses, and I just revamp and I refurbish. I not only do that with my voice, but I also do that with my lyrics. I do that with my writing style, the way I choose to piece my lyrics together. And then after I deliver, I go in the studio and I engineer, and I attempt to do that with the sound. And you were correct. So growing up, it was a mix of being self-taught, other people teaching me, and ideating the sound in my head. I remember a quick instance, and I'm only going to mention this instance because it's an instance that really helped me level up. So in the midst of my engineering for like hundreds of different local artists, not the best guy, but I'm like very communicative and I'm creative. So people are coming back to me, and they're coming back to me and they're actually paying me early on. Like I got paid when I was like 13, 14. As soon as I started getting it up and running, people were paying me for my time just out of respect. So it wasn't even like the craft was there. It was just the drive and the respect. But as building these sounds, I hear somebody give me the advice. They're like, hey, kid, you know, this engineering on your own is great and you're getting better, but you got to step into somebody else's studio just to get a feel, just to network and connect. And that's when I started to learn that the industry was about really building relationships. It's not what you can do for yourself or what you can do for other people, just who do you know and how good of friends are you? So I was like, okay, I'll do some collabs around the city. Some of the bigger guys who were taking note of me around the city were like, nah, we'll pay for the studio time. We'll pay for the car rides and stuff. You just need to find a way to show up. And we'll get in the studio and we'll knock out some work. So I go to the studio, and long story short, there's this engineer there. I don't want to, you know, just out of respect, I don't want to throw names and all these stuffs around, but there's this engineer there, and he tells me, hey man, don't watch over my shoulder. And I'm just like, I'm a kid. I'm interested in the process. I'm like 14 or yeah, I'm like 15. I'm at this point, at this stage, I was like 15, 16. But I was just like, I'm interested in the process. So why are you telling me not to look over your shoulder? And he says, well, for years I went to school, I paid for this building, I put money into this, I put my blood, sweat, and tears into this. Like I had to learn all of this. If you want to learn any of this, like you're gonna pay for it. You know, you're gonna intern for me, or you're gonna you're gonna go to college and put your own money up for it. And I was just like astonished, but I understood him. So I just backed up and I used my eagle eyes. From the very back of the room, I would record my cut, get on the couch, and I would just hawk. Like, I didn't care what anybody else was saying in the studio. I would just hawk down his screen and take mental notes of the EQ. And as he was EQing things, as he was setting up different gates, as he was setting up different noise gates and compressions, I was taking note of the numbers. I was taking note of the ratios. I was taking note of what each click, what each shape did to the sound every time it came back to me. And that made me understand some things that were going wrong in my mixes at home, where I was like, oh, okay, that's what I was missing. That's what I was missing. And then I would go home, and literally it only took that one session, because I went home, I opened up my EQ, opened up my own reverb and stuff. I duplicated the ratios. I duplicated the shape. And duplicating the shape wasn't enough to get the sound perfect, but it was enough to guide me in the right direction of that one thing that was going wrong with my sound. And to be specific, I did have a sound that was too muddy, and that little EQ shape that I learned was the high pass filter. And when I learned what the high pass filter was for and how key or not key it was to certain sounds that I was trying to get in my tracks, I began to understand more, and I was able to look up my own specific EQ techniques and specific compression techniques that I wanted, because now I knew, oh, these techniques have names. You know, this wasn't just a random shape I saw on the screen. Like, it's called a high pass filter. So there must be other versions of EQ. There must be other versions of compression. There must be some way that this is being set up by these people who've already done it. So I went and learned it, you know, off the internet, and then going to other studios and repeating the process. But I'm not gonna lie, other engineers were a lot more helpful. They weren't all like that. It was just that one that really drove me to that feeling of like, man, you gonna do me like that? Like, all right, I got you. And I'm not gonna lie, I command 10 times as high as a price as he does today. So,
and I tell you what, in listening, and this is something I really want our viewers to catch, like and I've always said this phrase, dedication to the craft, and just you explaining that story and the self-teaching, the really paying attention, the focus, knowing that you're in this to do something, you know, to do something big, to do something great. And just the way that you describe, you know, the detail, the attention, you're schooling a lot of people out here and letting people know, look, when you get into this, this is just scratching the surface of how serious you need to be, how knowledgeable you need to be, applying that and constantly learning. So I'm really, really happy that you threw some game out there. You're schooling a lot of people, even like you said, people who have, quote, been in it longer. But one thing I hope people take away, nobody questions your drive and your focus, and that you really are knee deep in this.
Yeah, I'm neck deep. I'm drowning.
So let me ask you this. So here you are, and I'm glad that we're having this talk so people know before they see you where you are. You've explained what you've worked through in order to get here. What would you say would be the next creative challenge for you? And I know that there's a bunch of them, but what would you say is something that would, quote, give you a little pushback to make your skill set even stronger than it is?
The next creative challenge for me that would give me pushback to make my skill set even stronger. All right, there are two that I'm really focused on right now. The first one is working close with music supervisors on getting my music placed in more movies and TV shows and commercial usage, because I know that what they need in the music and what I'm currently putting in the music, there's somewhat of a gap. And it's not that what I'm doing right now is bad. My fans definitely love it. There's definitely a crowd for it. But the gap between the way I kind of creatively go for different aesthetic sounds and then what the actual commercial market wants for, you know, that background track for a race scene, or the background music for a shootout or for an opening, you know, the sound that they're looking for and the sound that I'm pushing out, that gap is what I wish to close. I don't want to be another artist who has to constantly just be pitched and pitched and pitched and pitched. I want to have a relationship with people who understand where I came from creating music, where I'm trying to head, and then how I can use that music to better line out, you know, their media projects, whether it be their movies or their short films. And then the second thing that I want to do to close that gap is just work with not just bigger talent as far as like where they're at in their career, but higher quality people who have access to more tools, more gear, more analog stuff in studio, whether they be older or younger guys, just people who are excelling in areas where I'm not. You know, I'm really good at digital equipment. I'm really good at ideating sounds and bringing them to life. But there's that one guy who can run flows and racks all analog, and he can do it like it's the back of his hand. Like, I want to learn that skill. There's this guy who knows film editing like the back of his hand. He knows all the programs. He knows all the lenses. I don't want to just be the rapper on set getting the music video shot. After I'm off camera, I want to go back behind that camera set and be like, hey, bro, like, how are you editing this? Like, what's going on? Like, I want to be in that experience. And really, I just want to close the gap between the people I want to serve in the industry and the creativity that I want to reach and the people I want to work with and reach that creativity with. Those are the only really two gaps I'm looking to close, build strong relationships with those people.
I tell you what, based on what you've been able to describe, explain, share, I'll just go ahead and say it's just a matter of when. It's not a matter of if. I think everybody who's watching, everybody who's going to watch, and everyone who's going to pay attention is going to see, like, you're clear, you're focused. You know that there's more on the horizon for you. And like I said before, I'm just blown away. Seriously, I'm really just blown away with you sharing your story. I truly am.
I'm blown away with you giving me the opportunity to be here and speak. Like, honestly, all right. So I have my whole business development map right here. And one thing that I didn't predict from my last rollout was that I would get on Clubhouse, meet you, and that you would bring me this opportunity to speak. So now I'm reformatting for my next album release. I just got off the Dog Fox Leash EP run. The next EP we're about to run is Don't Be Afraid to Bloom in the Dark. And as I'm setting up the digital platforms, the digital channels that we're going to be pushing on, I'm like, man, should I find a way to push, not really push the music via Clubhouse, but push my presence via Clubhouse to then draw the people I'm seeking into my music, because I realize Clubhouse is allowing for not just target direct marketing, but it's getting so precise as to where, like, okay, journalist is a part of the key relationships I need to have in this business development canvas. People like you who give me these opportunities. And originally I was reaching them through, okay, my streams are going up on SoundCloud, my streams are going up on Spotify, I got numbers going up on socials from the campaigns that I'm running. Let me get my assistant to scour this and watch who's watching me. And as they watch who's watching me, we then go and find the separation between fans and then people in the industry who we can leverage. And I'm like, damn, that's a process. But then as I'm getting ready to gear up for this opportunity, I'm tracking, okay, I'm about to get a journalistic opportunity for my music. Where is this coming from? And as I was tracking it, it came from something that wasn't even on our business map, which is Clubhouse. And I'm like, oh, I got an opportunity coming straight from Clubhouse. Well, how fast did it take to develop? And when I tracked that, the relationship we built, me even getting on this platform, this whole interaction developed faster than any other business relationship coming from any other platform during the campaign run. And Clubhouse wasn't even a part of the strategy for development. So now I'm trying to see, is there a way I can implement that into my next rollout to get more people like you, even more people like myself, and get relationships and the things that we do in these relationships developing and pumping out faster? Because the only thing that separates me from my goals and the people who I'm going to work with from their goals is how fast we get together and make things happen.
Well, I tell you what, I'm glad, I'm glad we had that conversation. And like you said, it evolved over what, maybe like week and a half?
Yes, quick.
but it comes back to, having this platform. And again, there are some great people doing great things. And it's about documenting and sharing. And like you said before, and that's a whole nother topic, you never know who's watching you. You never know who's paying attention. And you never know, there might be that one thing that you say or share that kind of sparks and motivates on so many levels. What we're going to do right now is, I know the track that you sent me, we're going to go ahead and give them a little bit of a quick teaser. So that way, a lot of the things that you were talking about, they'll go ahead and get a chance to listen to. So we're going to play the proverbial, we're going to play enough of a snippet to whet the appetite. And then once the appetite's set, we'll make sure that you are letting people know now where can they go and get the meal. So sit tight for a moment, and our team's going to go ahead and get that track up. And it should be, make sure I have it correct, it should be Blase. That should be the track that you sent.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to have that up right about now.
Blase.
Yeah.
I don't want hoes, I want houses. Money on hundreds of thousands. You can find me what allowed it. Music and view from the back. And it's still cooking in the cold. 3 times away on my coat. 3 women tapping my phone. I'd rather tap when I smoke. Photo voltage on my neck. Photo voltage flex. I don't want pre-get tech. Billionaire boys in the debt. Went to Atlanta to flex. Smoking on nickel in the test. You know my gas is electric.
All right, so we just played a little bit of Blase, and it was great to hear, like you said, all those different things you talked about coming together. It's almost like the classic, we got this gumbo, and we're mixing all these things in the pot. And I tell you what, that's a good appetizer. So now that we've gotten everybody's appetite together, and as we get ready to wind down your segment, let people know the best ways to stay connected with you, engaged, where to download your tracks, all that type of stuff.
All right. The best way to stay connected with me is text me +1 501-508-0396 +1 if you're out the country. 501-508-0396. Got iMessage, got WhatsApp. I like to stay in contact with people personally. If you want to engage with me, social media, all social media is TSUKIXKAMI. TSUKIXKAMI. That's Tsuki X Kami on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube channel, Tsukiyomi, SoundCloud, all that. Don't forget to follow me on Spotify. I'll be bringing up all types of talent, working on different projects. Shouts out my producer, Night Shift, out in Canada. He's right now in London, Ontario. He's the one who produced Blase, and he produced the Dog Box Leash EP. And the next EP is produced by Chroma Key. Don't Be Afraid to Bloom in the Dark is on the way. He's also out of Canada. He's out of Quebec, Montreal.
Well, I tell you what, thank you so much for taking and making the time. I tell you what, it was part journalist, part like, gosh, this guy is real good and real knowledgeable. So seriously, thank you for taking and making the time. Best wishes, seriously. I know this was our first time, but I know it won't be our last. So best wishes, real talk, with everything that you're working on. Seriously. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to go to our commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to bring on our next guest on the Conversation Corner.
Thanks, guys.